All right, does anyone have anything that they'd like to talk about this morning? Or ask any question about? Was this instruction clear?
Rishi ji?
Yes.
Can,
Hello, good morning.
I just wanted to ask if our awakening or our sadhana is also ruled by grace.
If it is ruled by grace.
Ruled. Does our awakening sadhana is ruled by grace or dependent upon grace?
Our sadhana is manifesting in and as grace. If we understand that even to have the thought to awaken cannot be mine, how can this be mine? I am just an ordinary person going through my life, coming as a child. And then suddenly, born in this heart, is this desire to awaken, this desire to find the Supreme. Can this be my thought? No, I don't think so. I think this thought can only come from grace, can only come from some deep recognition, deep within consciousness, that the goal of this existence, if you will, is freedom. It's not to recognize, not to create freedom, but to recognize I am free, unborn, undying, in this moment. This is what sadhana prepares us for. But the very blessing that we have come into this life in some way and stepped onto the path of recognition, the path of awareness, the path of awakening, this comes through grace itself.
Destiny we also make, no? Destiny. You are saying if it is destined.
Yes.
Then we are responsible for destiny. We are making our destiny.
You know, this is always a thorny question in Advaita and in the teachings of Advaita. Does our destiny belong to us, or is our destiny foreordained? In other words, by the divine. Yes? By the self. This is why I say what we do with our sadhana is we express a willingness. My experience is that I cannot will myself into the recognition of being consciousness. I cannot use my mind to will that and say, this is my destiny and I'm going to make this happen. All I can do is say, if this is my destiny, I will put myself in a position to say, yes, I am ready. I will surrender. Whatever I need to surrender, I will surrender. So in this way, we control our destiny. But in another way, the destiny is already foreordained. We couldn't have any of these thoughts. We couldn't find ourselves as a sadhak. We couldn't find ourselves in spiritual life without there being some form of destiny which is greater than this personal story of me. Because this impulse to awakening has to continually break through this story of me, doesn't it?
Yes.
It always has to break through this story of me. So we have to find this place where there is some balance between exerting our will in terms of staying open to the possibility of awakening. I am always available for this when it is time, and knowing that it is our destiny to awaken. So having this faith that if we keep our intention clear, we remain open, we do the sadhana that we feel we need to do in order to stop the story of me from becoming the dominant characteristic of our mind. Let our devotion become our dominant characteristic. Yes, this is the purpose of sadhana. To move closer and closer to the self, to move closer and closer to God, but not because we're forcing our awakening to happen, but because we're reducing the barriers to awakening, which I am referring to as the story of me. So we keep reducing this story, we keep living our lives, but we keep freeing ourselves from this story of me. And in so doing, we put ourselves in step with our destiny, which is to recognize I am already free. I have always been free. I have never been bound. Sarla, if you have come this far, you have found yourself in satsang, and you have found yourself living from devotion, then this is the proof that grace is already operating in your destiny.
If there is something in our hand to earn the grace,
another tricky question. This is another tricky question of the mind. If there is a strong belief in me, then you must make a strong effort, but the effort is not to be free. The effort is to stop believing that the me, the limited sense of me that you think you are, is in control of your life or your experience. So the amount of effort or the amount of, maybe the amount of effort that you need to put into your sadhana is directly related to the strength of the belief that I am separate from him. I am separate from that which is here now as being, consciousness and bliss. If this belief that in me and the personality is very, very strong, then increase your effort. But as this belief that I must control my destiny and so on begins to subside through your practice, then you can exert a little bit less effort as time goes on. And this is because you are resting more and more in this recognition that grace is operating in your life and that you are being held and in fact carried by your destiny into the recognition, I am that which is aware.
both these aspects are going equally. Sometimes I feel nothing, everything is doing grace. Sometimes mind comes and it says you need more effort. Both these things are going together.
Yes, but so when that is happening, what is the effort that you think that you need to make at that moment?
I feel I need to be more in silence, more in this eye watching.
Very good. If that's what you feel, is that you, at that moment, is that you need to make more effort, but the effort is to just be, to become quieter, to move.
Yes,
Yes. If that's the effort, then yes, that's a small effort. That's just a remembrance. That's a remembering, oh, I have become distracted by this, that, and the other, family, life, world, etc. I've become distracted by that. Now I need to pull back into the silence of my own being, and I need to rest there. This is more of a remembrance than a real effort. So this is what I was meaning when I said you just need to realize that as you go along with your sadhana, you keep returning to this state of silent recognition. I am here, I am aware, so on. Awareness, I am that which is aware. This kind of remembrance comes, and then this is only a small effort, because as soon as you remember, I am this silence, I am the self. Now you can rest and relax again into that silence, and you should just drift into it, not have to make a huge effort. You don't have to do all day puja, and you don't need to go in, you don't need to run away to the mountain and go into a cave for a week. You go into your cave this quickly. This is a moment for silence. So you do that. This is the voice of grace speaking at that moment, calling you to return to itself. Beautiful.
wherever I am, whether I am in a crowd or I am in where, but that remembrance is always there. May not in the back of the back, remembrance is always
Yes.
there.
Yes, very good. Very good. Continue.
Thank you.
Yes. And have patience and compassion for the one that seems to forget and needs to be reminded. Have compassion for this one. Okay.
Rishi?
Hello.
Can
Hello,
can
Pooja. Yes.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello. I kind of resonated a bit with the arrogance part, with because I noticed that during the pandemic or so, I was living with in a sangha field during a very long time, and I had to come back to my country, and there was a lot of sadness in it inside that had to happen, and also recognizing that maybe there's some resistance playing out, and that's why it's unfolded like this,
Mm-hmm.
So somehow I didn't connect again, and there was maybe an underlying shame or something going on. And I recently reconnected. It just happened that it was just, I did try to reconnect, but I couldn't find my way. It was like a block somehow. And now I reconnected again, and I felt like, wow, why did it take so long? And then it also just showed a pattern, like a very strong pattern. Which is just like mind, a pattern. It just repeats your whole life. It just goes on. So
it repeats until you see it.
Yeah. And then I noticed also that it kind of, what happens is that when there's a strong mind energy, in satsang or in a meeting like this, I tend to not speak out when there is identification. It's like the choice is rather to just sit with it and let the space come open up, and then speak from a wiser place.
Yes.
There's a lot of fear to just speak out when it's the strongest, and I don't know if that is somehow there's a belief, and that still goes on, that maybe that's wisdom, and also it's a way of not speaking, a way of respect somehow, of like, what are you going to say? There's no clarity here, you're identified. I don't know if that is a good choice, but then I feel that maybe that's what's been going on all these months, that I haven't just contacted a Sangha friend or anything, because I felt there wasn't clarity here. And yeah, it was like a sense of respect somehow, and also of protecting something.
Yes, this is a dance of ego, isn't it? That says that I have something to protect, or this is very common in spiritual world. This is very common, that people only want to speak when they feel as though they are displaying some shining wisdom. The fallacy of this, right, is that it can cause you to not take advantage of an opportunity. And it's not just the opportunity to have feedback from someone in the satsang that you trust. It's also missing the opportunity to hear yourself say what's buried deep inside yourself, and you may not even realize because it's inside your head and you can't hear it. But often we have the experience in our own lives, but especially in satsang, where as soon as you say, this is what's going on, and yuck, I don't like this doesn't feel good, this sounds terrible, this is not awakening. As soon as you hear that inside yourself, express it outside, though you don't need to do that. But for many people, to hear oneself express what's actually happening and is kind of going around and around in a circle in the mind is actually what breaks that cycle. Somehow to give voice to something that isn't completely understood creates the space in which we hear ourselves speak, and then we become our own satsang teacher. We are able to hear and feed back into that loop and then break it because we have heard it. So I'm just encouraging you. First of all, don't take yourself so seriously. When things are difficult, they are difficult. This is it. This practice in many ways is really about recognizing that something is here, it is difficult, this is what it is. Speak to someone about it, or if you don't need to speak to someone about it, just be aware of it, notice it, be with it until you have some clarity around it, and then you can move on. But many times if you don't do that in some way, there is no clarity and you aren't able to move on. And then you go through this period of time that can go on for days or weeks or months, where you are in the back of everything you're doing. This storyline is just going on and repeating itself and reinforcing itself. And as soon as you hear it or you share it, then something breaks with it.
Yeah, it feels like right now it's not at its peak,
It's
That's
not
why I'm
at its
able
peak.
to speak. Yeah, that's why I'm able to speak. But recognizing that it feels like it's necessary to just be able to speak whenever it's difficult.
Well, yes, that's true, Puja, but I really would like to encourage you just to be willing to be with what is. Sometimes we are more and we are able to express, share, examine within our own minds and our own being what is happening for us. And at other times we simply can't. This is also the nature of Parabdha karma. This is the nature of the way in which we happen to find ourselves in this moment. So the very first step on the path to spiritual recognition or realization is to realize that the very thing that is necessary for oneself is compassion. And that means being willing to not only examine what is here in the moment, but also to fully accept what is here. And sometimes that means I can speak about what is troubling me or what is holding me back or what is this resistance that I feel. And other times I simply cannot do it. And during those moments, it's good just to come into the group like this or into some setting where, this is the whole thing about being in spiritual community, is that often you can speak to others who have a similar kind of recognition that you do. But often you don't need to speak about something. The fire of the community just sort of burns things up. And sometimes when we leave spiritual community, as you have, I know from your having told me this, that you were involved for a long time, it can be difficult over many months even or years to find how do I learn to express myself in a larger frame of reference, not just within this bubble, let's say, of a community. So begin with compassion, always move back to compassion, understanding, loving yourself where you are in this moment, and share when you can share, and you can't, but you can't. Be kind.
It feels like although I'm not in that context, it's like I'm not entering another context. Like I can't, at this moment, I'm just sitting at home and basically with my family. I don't feel any, it's almost like there's no energy to engage so much. So it's, and also there's a me that goes on, this is happening and it has to be different, and I can see it's just a me, and I can just allow it to be how it is right now, and
okay.
And it is fine.
So when this sentence ends right here, do you then just come right back into silence? Or do you come back into some sense of looking at your current circumstances versus your past circumstances versus your future circumstances? Or when this sentence stops, do you come back into the center of being and rest in your own silence?
Usually yes, but now that I'm speaking, it feels actually a bit emotional, It's funny at this moment, but it's been quiet, like I do come back and I don't engage so much. But there's this underlying thing, because it's now emotional, it feels like there's an underlying energy that it's not being cut off completely.
So now that this emotion is rising, you can feel this emotion is rising now, correct?
Yeah.
Are you also aware of what this emotion is rising in?
There's a knowing that it's just an emotion, There's
and what is knowing this? What is knowing this? And of course, this isn't a what. It's just the knowing. Yes?
Yeah.
There is this knowing that emotion is arising, correct?
Yeah.
And if you just stop there, in this knowing, with the emotion present, now what? Are you the emotion or the knowing?
And the knowing.
The knowing. And so the knowing informs the emotion in some way.
Yeah, there's like the emotion has a location and a shape, and there's also a kind of a relief and a spaciousness, which is kind of a recognition, you know.
Yes, yes, beautiful, yes. This is the recognition of emotion rising in the self. Emotion rising as silence, from silence. Silence as the foundation for all the other experiences that come after that. This is why I point you back toward this knowing. Because it's not to block the emotion, it's rather to see the emotion for what it is, which is some phenomenon or some object or some feeling, however you want to say that is passing in the silence of being. So now from this place, if you have something to express about the emotion or about whatever else might be rising in mind or in this moment, you can express it with the recognition that it is a passing phenomenon. And when you do that, you don't take it personally. It doesn't become your point of identification. You remain as the knowing in which this object is rising, playing out for a period of time, and then falling. Now you can choose to play with this emotion or not. You are free of it. This environment, yes.
Yeah, there is like right now it's not happening, but many times there is a knowing that I'm recognizing, like something starts to rise, and I kind of recognize it. Oh, that's the pattern. Don't look at it. So it's usually I'm kind of turning away, but I don't know if that's a subtle not being with it, you know.
So the way that I have always used to determine if that's the case, and I recommend, is that you simply do what you're doing right now, the way you describe it. You see it starts to arise, so you're standing in it, you're recognizing it, you're knowing what it is, but you're not attaching to it and letting it fall. The way to know if more needs to be done than that, my rule is 3 times. If it keeps rising, 1, let go. 2, let go. 3, okay, look at this a little bit better. Look at it a little bit more deeply. Because something in the nature of that moment is wanting to be addressed. Again, just because one looks at it, sees it 3 times, does not mean anything about the nature of awareness or silence or stillness. It simply means that it wants to be addressed right now. This wants to be looked at. Developing this kind of habit enables us eventually to come to the place the vast majority of things, thoughts, emotions, experiences that rise in awareness are simply let go of, and because we haven't put any energy to them with the mind, they dissolve, usually within a few times of something arising. But sometimes there are deeper things that rise into awareness, and they seem persistent. They just keep tapping on the window from the outside and saying, please open the window and talk to me, So it's like at this moment, it's a good idea to listen. Because any time that we don't do that, we suppress over time, not the first time, not the second time. We're just observing and letting go. But if we do that many, many times over the course of many months or years, this becomes a suppression. And as we all know from our own experience, that which we suppress does not go away. It simply builds energy, builds strength, our unwillingness to look at it until it finally needs to erupt, either by tears, causing us to collapse in some way, the experience of a volcano-like emotion coming up. This is all the sign that whatever it is that's at the base of that, we have just been pushing it down, repressing it, suppressing it. So use the 3 times rule. If something comes up for a 3rd time, for a 4th time, then be willing to sit with that and say, what is this? Why is this here? Not necessarily why, but what is this and what can I learn from this? This keeps coming up. And be willing to just rest with it for a little bit longer, even if it's difficult. Even if it's come up before. A year ago you were doing, the same thing happened. But have some faith that each time that you do that, what's happening is you're taking some of the energy off of it so that somehow the ego sense, the mind sense, feels safe enough to be able to look at that belief directly. So it takes away some of the fear.
But
Because
the ego sense, the mind sense,
the sense, the sense of me. Usually when things come up with a great deal of emotion, a great deal of force or whatever, it is the sense of me, that sense of defensiveness that we talked about a little bit before, that sense of self-preservation comes up and says, oh, I can't deal with this right now, so I'm just going to push it aside. So that's what I'm calling the ego sense. It's that strong sense of me.
That's the ones that is suffering it.
Yeah, that's suffering and doesn't feel like it has the strength to be able to deal with what's rising in the mind or in the heart at that moment.
Thank you, Rishi.
Yes. And so let me remind everyone that all of these things can come up. They will come up throughout your day-to-day life. They will come up in your practice and through your meditation. But always remember that the foundation of everything, of your whole existence, is silence. In being and non-being, they are rising in silence. Everything that is still and everything that is moving is rising in silence. The purpose of our lives is to know ourselves as that which is unmoving, unborn, and undying. Everything that moves on the screen of consciousness is not different from that silence. Knowing this, you understand, and there is nothing to be afraid of. I am already free. Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardhanam Urvarukamiva Bandhanan Mrityor Mukshiya Mamritavat Swaha Bhuva Bhu Om Sat Jung Hang Om. Namaste.